Parak Chaf Dalid 24. The story of Shiduchim. The first half of the parsha was about thinking about the future and legacy, and taking care of the Chesed Shel Emet that Avram Avinu does for Sarah Imenu, and also connected to Eretz Yisrael intrinsically and inherently, making sure that there's an achuzat kever, which is not merely a burial plot, but already a land that is going to be held in perpetuity by the Jewish people. It's in Hebron. We have it, Baruch Hashem, in our hands today again. That's Merat HaMachpelah. That's the area where our forebears, our patriarchs and matriarchs, are interred. And from there, in Yitzhak Hashem, they will arise at the end of days to their destiny at the time of Tchiyat HaMeitim. The first half of the parsha now shifts to the second half, which continues with the same theme: connection to Eretz Yisrael. Avram, very clear with his Eved, do not let my child leave here, remember, and bring someone back. That's going to be our discussion today. Also a concern with legacy and a recognition, perhaps somehow connected thematically. I think it is. That's my view. I don't know if I'm accurate in saying so. Once Avram Avinu buried Sarah Imenu, he wants to put his own affairs in order. It stands to reason. One flows to the other. It's not a stam. He thought about the shidduchim of his son right now. It's that he realized my time is also limited, and the sobering reality that his Eshet Chayil had left the world meant he also wanted to put things in place, a legacy for the future. And here also something in perpetuity, at least to the extent that he could impact such a thing, which is to set up the next household of the Jewish people, and particularly centered around and in Eretz Yisrael. Let's open chapter 24 in Sefer Breisheet. Of course, all of us on this call, I have no doubt, we know the story backwards and forwards. So we'll try to look at it with fresh eyes and pretend we don't know what's going to happen. It's sometimes a challenge to do that, but that is our call when we learn to try to see things with fresh eyes, and then to understand the Mefarshim, hopefully, and what they're trying, the problems and challenges that they're trying to solve, that they see within the Chumash, and things they're trying to add up together. So Parak Chaf Daled. Avraham Zakein ba bayamim v'Hashem beirach et Avraham bakol. Why is that pasuk here? Because the next pasuk is Vayomer Avraham el Avdo Zekan beito Moshe b'chol hashlosim na yadcha tachet yirechi, and he starts telling his servant, who was the elder of his household, who rules over everything that Avram Avinu owns, place your hand under my thigh. The question could have very easily, the question goes like this: why doesn't it just say Vayihi achar advarim ha'eleh, which is the syntax in a number of other stories? And so it was after these things. The fact that there's some joining pasuk that tells you that he told his servant to do this against the backdrop of Va'avram Zakim Ba Bayamim V'Hashem Berachat Avram Bakol. Shall give me 1 second? Automatically opens the door that clearly there's something here. He realized he was older. Some of the Mefarshim say he recognized something was shifting in the world for himself, and he wanted to put things in order. Right? That maybe covers the part about Vayhi's Avram Zakin Ba Bayamim Vayomer Avram Alavdo Zakan Beito. He was old, and therefore he said it. No, it doesn't say that. Instead, it throws in Hashem blessed Avram with everything. And the question, of course, is what does with everything mean? One of the Mefarshim right away says with everything. Well, the point is with everything. Except for one thing that he had not yet done, right? Who says that? The Bechor Shor, Rav Avram ben Arambam, the Radak. They all say, what does it mean? God blessed Avram with everything. It means everything except for this one thing, and that's what he had to tend to, and that's why this story is happening. There are other interpretations we'll come to presently. Shelley, go right ahead. Just unmute yourself. Fire away. Good morning, and also happy Hanukkah.
Good morning, happy Hanukkah. Okay, my question is Zakein. Zakein to me, old. We've got it with David and Shmuel. Is that Shmuel? No, I think that's the beginning of Malachim Aleph.
Yeah.
It means that it diminished capacity in a sense, and so are we supposed to think? Okay, so if we're supposed to, especially because you don't need well on in years and you don't need old, one of the two. I mean, it's so.
Why both? Why both?
Why both?
Yeah.
But
yeah.
Zakein, I think in this case, it means that Avraham does not have the same capacity that he did before. that he's losing it in God's, or he's it's the end of his time with the mission, and it's going to start being Yitzchak's time, and so therefore the Zaken.
There's a transition.
There's a shifting of the guard, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, a number of Mefarshim go in that direction. By the way, they don't claim when they say he's losing it, they don't say that he is he's losing cognitive capacity, right? They don't say he's losing cognitive capacity. What they say is that Avram Avinu got old and he realizes his days are numbered, Baba Yamim, and therefore he realized I have to take the next step, get people in the right places, i.e., I have to find a shidduch for Yitzchak Avinu. There has to be a continuity of the Jewish people, but it is against the backdrop of the Zikna. By the by, Shalian, if you remember, but that's the Haftorah for Parshat Chayesara is Davka v'Hamelach.
Oh yeah, it's my Haftorah.
Exactly the point, right? Is that it's transitioning to the next generation. That's the sort of the signal. The person's already older. Now, in the case of David, we discussed extensively, there is some kind of enfeeblement in some way. It could be with Avram, that's true as well. Again, and the point is that the Zaken is there. The question is, why is it Zaken and Baba Yamin? Baba Yamin means coming into days, right? Among Hasidim, they have some beautiful, beautiful ideas. Baba Yamin, he brought his days with him. It's a beautiful idea. Like every day counted. The same way we said with Sari Imenu, her years, as how old she was, she could also be other age levels, if you will, in terms of sophistication, simplicity, as some kind of two polarities that she was always oscillating between, right? And the paragon of probity and dignity and privacy and youthfulness and exuberance and simple faith and all of these things all at the same time and experienced and right. Avram Avinu Zaken Baba Yamin. That's not the pshat though. There's something over here. He's Zaken. He's Baba Yamin. Now you could say, I like the Drush. I like the Drush. Head for the hills. It's good. Zaken Baba Yamin. This is much more meaningful to me. But we do have to answer, like, what is Zaken Baba Yamin? If you look at the syntax for David, same thing. V'hamelech David Zaken Baba Yamin.
Yeah.
Yeah. In the case of David, though, and here's the contrast. Vayichasu babgadim v'lo yichamlo. David wore clothing, covered him in clothing, and it didn't warm him. In Avraham, the second part of the pasuk is Vashem berach et Avram bakol. He had everything. A bit of a contrast with David.
I used to think, though, that nothing is more important now than the legacy and going on to the future generation. And the fact is that Abraham is not going himself to take care of this. He has to trust somebody else. And that shows an age or a weakness. So the Zaken is he's too old, or the end of it is he's too old to go himself.
Yeah, the Chizkuni, that's what the Chizkuni says. The Chizkuni says that his strength had waned. He couldn't start taking a big trip up to somewhere in southern Turkey. I mean, it's far. So he told his servant, he sent his servant second best, best he could do, and that's what he did. That's the Chizkuni's view. Now, there are others who feel differently about it. The fact that he's Zaken Baba Yamim, others see in a different way. They think maybe he actually has his vigor still, but for the fact that he got older. The Perush very beautifully of the Toldot Yitzchak in one of his comments, the Kli Yakar, the Ketav Sofer along these lines as well. I have here quoted in the Otzim of Farshiat Torah, this anthology I like to use because it gives you people lined up. That some people get old because of suffering, or they get old because of illness or poverty or lo aleinu, the loss of children. But here, Davka, the two parts of the pasuk are connected. Avram is Zaken Baba Yamin. He's old coming into days, and God blessed him with everything. He is not old on account of any of these reasons of suffering, privations, sickness, loss. He's only old because Baba Yamin. Chronologically, he's getting older. It's an interesting take on it, as opposed to with David, where Zaken Baba Yamin, and his clothing doesn't even warm him. We saw that. Don't want to go off on a tangent in Melachim Aleph, but perhaps here there are those who hold that's the issue. His vigor is still there, but for the fact that he's old in chronological age, And that's why he's blessed with everything. It's like the expression people would say to each other, if you have your health, you have everything. He had his health, he had everything. Yeah, the only reason he was old was chronologically he was old. I'm suggesting thematically also, I don't think it's a big stretch. He saw him. His wife passed away. He realized, it already had mentioned, by the way, previously, in an earlier story, right? At a particular juncture, which ends up being most miraculous juncture, right? It's a nes nistar, it's a hidden miracle. Apropos Hanukkah, it's a hidden miracle. But if you look back in chapter 18 in Parshat Vayera, you see there's a pasuk there. Look in chapter, I think it's chapter 18, I think is where I saw it. In Parshat Vayera, the Torah goes out of its way to tell us that the two of them are old. Remember? Verse 11, chapter 18, verse 11. Va'avraham v'Sarah zikenim ba'im bayamim. Chadal liot l'Sarah orach kanashim. They're ba'im bayamim. Means they're up there in years. Yeah, that's what happened. The word yamim, days, sometimes literally means days, and sometimes the word yamim means years. To take an easy example, a recent example, Vayihi miketz shnatayim yamim ufaro choleim, the beginning of Parshat Miketz, and so was after 2 yamim. Nobody interprets that as 2 days. It's 2 years later. That's why the Saramashkim, the drinks master, has to announce, the drinks master general, as I like to call him, has to announce, Chata'anim is kirayom. I have to recount my sins today. I neglected to mention this happened already 2 years ago. Yeah. So, and there are other examples also. In Parshat Bo talks about Pesach and Perek Yud Gimel Miyamim Yamima. There are a lot of examples of this. So Baba Yamim came on in years. By the Radak says, he was full in years. His life was coming to an end. That's all. The idea also, the Abarbanel says Zakein means the beginning of old age, as opposed to Svayamim, which is already the end. Svayamim is the fullness of days, is a way of saying, like you could say, elderly, as opposed to a senior, say extremely old, aged. But the Zakein Baba Yamim, the Barbanel says, is somewhere in between. It's like this middle ground between the Zakein, which is the beginning of being an elder, versus or a senior, versus coming to the very end. So this is somewhere in the middle. Whatever the case, but we have this idea that we want to know the age of Avram is coming into years, and at the same time, Vashem Berachet Avram Bakol. God blessed him with everything. His old age didn't have to mean that he was suffering. It just meant the years had added up. If you look at Rashi, it's an astounding example of where you scratch your head and you think, is this the pshat? It's like very strange. Like what happened to Rashi, who we saw previously claimed in the 3rd chapter of Breisheet, is one of the comments of Rashi, was where he says, my job is to give you the pshat, basically pshuto shel mikra, v'nilobati lefarish pshuto shel mikra, and the Agadam miyashevet at divrei hamikra. I'm going to tell you, the Agadal only quotes something that's Agadic if it's going to somehow settle issues within the Torah itself, the written Torah, in the Torah Shebichtav. So Rashi here, very simple, quoting from the Medrash Tanchuma, but very mysterious, very mysterious. He could have quoted it also from the Gemara and Masechet Bava Batra on Tet Zayin has this as well, with some other ideas which we'll look into in a moment. Berachet Avram Bakol, Ola Begematria Ben. The numerological value of the word Bakol, Bet is 2, Chaf is 20, Lamed is 30, is the same as Ben, Bet is 2, and Nun is 50. Since he has a son, he's going to have to get the son married off. So let me pause here. We're learning already for a little while, all of us together, and I'll throw the question out. Why does Rashi reach for a gematria. The gematria is solving the problem. Now, gematria, just to say, is within the world of remez. It's not pshat. It's not medrash. It's not drush. It's not homiletic in nature. It's not interpretive. The word drush really means something interpretive. Medrash agada would be something in English would call homiletics, and medrash halacha is interpretation, which refers to the world of halacha as such. So it's very strange. You should reach for it. So help me out. Who's got ideas? Why is he reaching for the given? And the problem is he's telling us a gematria to answer a problem. Muzar me'od. So what do you think? Why?
Everything's got to mean something. Yeah. So you can't have this phrase in there, he's blessed with everything. It's got to mean something. So what's the everything he's blessed with? So he's got to answer that question. And he chooses to answer it that it's going to be the son with legacy going on. And well, how can I say Hakol equals Bakol equals the son? Okay, so he's stretching. But that's the problem is why it's there.
This is excellent. We just said actually excellent. Now here's the piece. It's going to this gematria, which you like a gematria. I mean, seriously, it's beautiful, but really now, bakol yet everything. It answers an important problem. You tell me in verse number 1, he is blessed with everything. But what is verse 2 through the end of chapter 24? Pretty much, he didn't have everything. But if he's blessed with everything, it means he was blessed to have had a son who he waited quite literally a century for. Then now we answer the problem.
Why is it Bakol and not Hakol?
What?
Why is it Bakol, not Hakol?
Yeah, that's true. Now, why? The gematria wouldn't work out if it was Hakol. Maybe it's kidding aside. It could be that is the answer. In other words, otherwise we're left with the problem. Why doesn't it say Bashem Berachat Avraham im Hakol? I mean, it's sure to say Bakol with everything. That's the sort of the translation that we generally reach for. But you understand. Otherwise, we're wondering, why are you telling me Avram had every bracha in the world, and then you undermine it by telling me what he didn't have yet? Just say he's old, and therefore he had to get his servant involved to go get a wife for Yitzchak. We don't have to hear that he got a big bracha. But if we hear that he realized that the bracha of everything is the bracha of a child, now we feel, he had a big bracha. And we also learn that with the bracha of children, which not everyone is zocheh to have such a bracha, but if someone has a bracha of a child biologically, or as in Western culture, we call it adoption. I say in Western culture because as far as the Torah is concerned, call him a gadol ben chaveru kil yilado. If you raise someone else's child, it's like you gave birth to them. Rav Soloveitchik has a beautiful essay on this, and if anyone's interested, it's a book called Family Redeemed in English. Most of it is highly readable. Some of it is in jargon that I struggle with myself. There's some footnotes that try to explain some of the more philosophical terms, but he has a whole chapter there called Parenthood, Natural and Redeemed. And he speaks about how Judaism never accepted the idea of adoption. Adoption is a foreign concept to us, but we have something else, which is redeemed parenthood, which is when someone raises someone else's child, which expands, of course, the notion of who is a parent to include Vishinantam livanecha v'dibartabam from the Shema, teach your children, banecha. Rashi writes there, quoting from the Gemara, Elu Tamidecha, those are your students, right? It would include anybody who helps raise someone else's child, it's a Kiyu Yilado, right? So, and just something for consideration, it's a beautiful idea. So with every bracha, however, come challenges, and sometimes very serious challenges. And sometimes we ask Hashem, I have this bracha, but the bracha comes with so many strings attached. It's so hard for me. Why? Avram Avinu also had sorrows at the end of his life. You would have thought it should have been so easy for him. Hashem promised him, you're going to have a son. It didn't promise him he's going to have children after that. Of course he did. So here Avram's already old. His son's no spring chicken. He doesn't have a he didn't get married yet. How come? He's like an elder bach. How come he didn't get married? Because it's complicated. The world's complicated. You want the bracha, you have to go seek it. You can't just going to come on a silver platter necessarily. It could, but it doesn't always. He was blessed with everything, and that didn't mean that everything worked out. It means, okay, I have to do something now. It's a kasha. It's a challenge. It's a challenge. But this gematria answered the conundrum of, okay, why did you throw in that he has a bracha and then undermine it? But Shelley, what you're saying, I love what you're saying. This is the there's a connection thematically. Now Rashi brought this into the pshat, but he had to reach for the instrument of remez, of gematria. Now Rashi didn't make this up. This is from Chazal. Chazal already tried to say this. Now you don't have to use that. The bakol could just be, as mentioned before. Bakol means he had his health. He had everything. He simply had everything he needed. He had his health. He wasn't weighed down by tsuris, etc. And that's his bracha. It's just he's Baba Yamim. But you should know, even though he's Baba Yamim, God gave him everything. He wasn't ill, and therefore he could command his his servant, to go and do this task. Contra the Chizkuni, who says it's because he's older. This is another thought. By the by, there are Achronim, the Hemek Davar particularly, the Netziva Volozhin, writes that why did Avram have to send his Eved to go get a wife for Yitzchak, and he didn't go himself? Mitzvah bo yotem v'shlucha. The Gemara says better you do the mitzvah on your own than to send an emissary. The point is, he was so his great bracha was that he was already. I'm ad-libbing. The Netziv doesn't use exact this language, but he was a parent already to many hundreds and thousands and tens of thousands of people. He was in charge of them. He was responsible for them. I don't know, he didn't run their lives, but they came to seek counsel with him. This one wants a bracha. That one wants to know about Emunah. This one's learning. That one, can you daven for me a little bit? He was the chacham of the door. So they came to him. So they asked him questions about all sorts of things, Emunah, etc. He had so many burdens to bear as a leader. He couldn't just pick up and go on a field trip. He had to stay. So he had to send his shaliach. You have this even in modern times. There are many analogs to this, to great world leaders. I think of, why not? Might as well say it. The Lubavitcher Rebbe, Zechat Tzadik V'Kadosh Livracha, right? The man never traveled in his whole life. He never took a vacation, and he never went to Eretz Yisrael. And he never pretty much left town. I think one time he went somewhere upstate. I think one time for a trip somewhere. And otherwise he was shuttling between where he was in Crown Heights and his father-in-law's kever in Queens. That's it. Couldn't just leave. Too many people, too many things. So Avram Avinu was even more than that. The whole world relied on there was only one person. There was one rabbi. It was him. Couldn't go. It was a bracha. Shem Berach Avram Bakol. But also came with a price tag. He couldn't take care of himself. They charged someone else to do it. I want to show you the Gemara in Masachet Bava Batra, and of course it will raise hackles for some of you. But in the interests of intellectual honesty, let's say that's what Chazal say. We should see it inside, but also to understand it perhaps on a deeper level in the context in which it is spoken, not in the world of 2021, not in Tafshin Pei Bet, but in the world of antiquity, such as it was. So this is the Gemara in Masachet Bava Batra, page 16b, Tet Zayin Amud Bet. And if you look down here, the Gemara darshans, what does these words mean? Hashem blessed Avraham with everything. My bakol. What does bakol mean? What does it mean that God blessed him with everything that he could possibly need? Mazel Tomeret. So the Gemara darshans several different possibilities of what it means. Okay. So here you have the quote. The Gemara says, "Bakol, my bakol." Different opinions. Now I'm warning in advance. Different opinions means they don't necessarily agree. They're sometimes in conflict with each other. But the fact that the Torah used this container of the word bakol What is everything? Enables different chachamim to plug in different things. Which one of these is historically accurate? Ani lo yodea. I just don't know. But on another level, and this is painful for some people to consider, it doesn't matter. I don't care which one historically is the right one, the actual translation. The whole point is that there are multiple interpretations of what this is, and they're all within the frame of Torah. They're all within the Geder. That's what Chazal quote. Which one of these people had to receive tradition from his Rebbe? Which one of them said, I never thought to add up the gematria, but it actually taka, it's Ben, and that would make sense with the rest of what's going on. Another one, right? Of course, the easy retort to it is, why don't you say Hashem berech et Avraham im Ben? Why do you have to write Bakol? Understand? Bakol, the Ben. So just say Ben. No, Bakol is more beautiful. Yeah, but right? So it's not ironclad that Ben equals Bakol, therefore Bakol must mean Ben. So Rabbi Meir says the first thing. My Bakol, Rabbi Meir says Bakol means, where are we here? So I lost the place. Rabbi Meir Omer, Shelo Haita Lobat. He had a great bracha. You know what the bracha was? That he did not have a daughter. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Shahaita Lobat. Rabbi Yehuda says, no, the bracha was that he did have a daughter. He absolutely had a daughter. That's the bracha. How come we never hear about the daughter? I don't know. That's the question, Rabbi Yehuda. Where's the daughter? And Rabbi Meir, what do you mean he had a bracha, he didn't have a daughter? So the Mefarshim point out, in antiquity, in the olden days, this was not a simple matter to get the daughters married off. Who exactly was she going to marry? Where was the man that she could marry that would be on a level to marry her? And say some of the Mefarshim, the Ramban particularly writes about this. The point is, he couldn't marry her off to the Bnei Canaan. That wasn't going to happen. And the tradition was that the wife followed wherever the husband went or was. Therefore, he'd have to marry her off to someone who lived in the old country. And in the old country, much as he thinks that there is something redemptive there, what is there also? Idolatry. He's going to have to marry her off. She's going to go out to Avodah Zarah. How's he going to find who's the person going to be? Now, you could say to me, it's lovely, but seriously, he had all these Talmidim. Why, if he had a daughter, why didn't he marry off the daughter to someone who he knows and trusts? How about to his Eved? Rabbi Meir, maybe that's not right. Maybe it's not right to say he didn't have a daughter. So now Rabbi Yehuda says the bracha was, Bakol means none of have a son, but he also had a daughter, a hidden daughter. Yeah, Choliyot. Midrashim describe in various places that there were children, quote unquote, hidden children, not in the sense in the 20th century version of that, but hidden children means they weren't mentioned. They weren't part of a story. Maybe this daughter did end up marrying someone of the Canaanim. Who knows? Who knows? Acherim, the others say, and this is a bit of a problem because oftentimes the word Acherim is a stand-in for Rabbi Meir. So who is that? If it says Rabbi Meir over here and it's Acherim, lo yodea. Acherim omrim, others say, Shelley, I see your hand, but give me 1 minute to finish this. Bad haitalo Avram ubakol shema. Avram had a daughter, and you know what her name was? Bakol. He named her Bakol. What a beautiful and fitting name. I have everything. Bakol Shema. He has a daughter, and her name is Bakol. Now, before we go further in the Gemara, just point out the Ramban. We won't see it today. We won't have time, so I want to stick a little more surface, as if this is so surface, but we might get back to it. The Ramban has a long essay here where he explains that these expressions, he didn't have a daughter, he did have a daughter, are not referencing literally having a child, a daughter. There's something much deeper here on the level of Sod. So we have the Pardes, the orchard of Jewish learning, Pshat, Remez, Drash, and Sod. Sod is just that. It's secret, it's esoteric. And the Ramban, who oftentimes would introduce a Kabbalistic writing by saying, we're not involved in Kabbalah, or he would say, al derech ha'emet, on the way of truth. And then he would tell you what it is. So he clearly was, not that I'm such an expert by any means, but he thought it was admissible as part of understanding the pshat of the Torah. And he thinks that the word Bakol Shema, when it describes her name was Bakol, there's a whole mystical layer that's going on here. That's being introduced Davka here as Abraham is going off to sending his Eved off to go find a match for Yitzchak. Okay, Shelley waited so patiently. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, I know that there are midrashim that say that all of Yaakov's sons were born with a twin daughter, whom
Yeah.
then they married, because this is before the Torah, and so this way they didn't have to marry Canaanite women. They couldn't
Yeah.
go back to
Yeah.
Haran.
Yeah. Yeah. Solves the problem, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, it's I don't like it, but obviously, if obviously Adam's children married, their siblings.
Cain and
So
Hevel. Yeah.
why, yeah, why in this case wouldn't this daughter, if there is this daughter, why wouldn't there be a medrash that she marries Yitzchak? Solves the problem, except for the incest. And if you've got
Except for
daughter,
that. But you're
well,
right.
but the daughter wouldn't be from Sora, because otherwise it would be a half sister, because otherwise it wouldn't it would you would think that the text would have to tell you that Sora had a daughter.
Exactly.
So therefore it's a half sister, and
Yeah.
I don't know, none of the commentators has a medrash or to receive tradition about that. Okay.
Which all seems to point in the direction of Rabbi Meir that he didn't have a daughter. Or, as the Ramban says it doesn't literally mean he had a daughter. There's a deep mystical concept. What does it mean? I just finished telling you a whole sidebar, which is not totally a tangent. I think it's germane. Parenthood, natural and redeemed. So Avram had a daughter. The daughter's name was Bakol, but the daughter didn't have to be literally that he had a biological daughter, and it doesn't have to be even a person, who's a student. It could refer to something much more esoteric that's going on here, another layer. But you're right. If there is a daughter in the picture, half sister, maybe you should marry her. No.
Could it refer that to the Eved, who we say is Eliezer? Could it refer to his daughter? Because then the next sentence is going to be he talks to Eliezer, but he doesn't want Yitzchak to marry Eliezer's daughter, even if she's a disciple of Abraham.
We will come to that. But I've not heard that was, I never saw anywhere that's Bakol, that her name is Bakol. That the Bakol means the daughter of Eliezer, but there is a layer. You are referencing a layer where the Eved Avraham will be perhaps on a certain channel. He's thinking like, oh, I'd really like to marry into this family, and Avram's telling him that's not going to happen, which is another question. Why doesn't that happen? Why can't that happen? We'll come to it, but your point is well taken. Anyway, I wanted to show you something else that's in the Gemara. The next layer, beyond the daughter question, is a third approach, right? So we have four people, three people had said, two approaches, I should say. He did have a daughter, he didn't have a daughter. Okay, Rabbi Elazar Hamodai. By the way, here, back to this one more second. Rabbi Meir says he didn't have a daughter because it would be challenging. Rabbi Yehuda says, he had a daughter, which means what does it mean? He had every bracha in the world. It means that he had a daughter. It's a great bracha to have a daughter. It's right there. Yeah. Rabbi Meir says, well, bracha or no bracha, it's a bracha. He didn't have a daughter because there'll be so many challenges with how to marry her off, etc. Okay. And Acherim want you to know her name is Bakol. Hashem Berach Avram Bakol. The majority opinion, by the way, seems to be, if you could call it that. Again, it's an agadic, so you don't have to paskin one or the other. The majority opinion, if you want to use that language, again, because we don't paskin when it comes to midrashim, is that the reference here is that he did have a daughter, and her name might have even been Bakol. That's the Acherim say. Okay, back in the Gemara. Rabbi Eliezer Hamodai says, you know what Bakol means? He was blessed with everything. It's Stagninu Taita Belibo Shel Avraham Avinu. Shekol Malchei Mizrach Umarav Mashkimi Lepitcho. Avram Avinu has on his heart some kind of itztagninut. He has some kind of a necklace or something. Sorry, excuse me, not a necklace. He has in his heart. He has that's the next one coming. Itztagninut means the astrological knowledge. It's in his heart. He knows the pathways of the stars. So the kings of east and of west all come to him to get guidance about what astrological sign it is. So he's a scientist. quote unquote, in those days, the astrologers. And he knows what's going to happen, etc. And he can read the stars, if you will. Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai Omer, Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai says he has a precious gemstone, Evan Tova, Haitat Tluyav Tzavor Shel Avram. He has a precious gem on his neck. Shekol Chol Haroto Miyad Mitrapeh. Anytime someone is ill, they see it and they're healed. Uvishash Niftar Avram Avinu, when Avram Avinu died, or he departed from the world, Min HaOlam, Tla'ah Kodesh Baruch Hu B'Galgal Chama. God put it up in the sun, in the disk of the sun. Amar Abaye Hanad Amar Inshe Idli Yoma Idli Kitzira. So, like Abaye taught us, people like to say the saying, the common saying is, as the day is coming, is waning, so the because of the sun, so it's under the heat of the sun, so too the illness is also diminishing or abating in some such way. So right here, according to Rabbi Elazar Modai, it's that many people came to consult with him. Now, what exactly it's stagninut is, God gave him the bracha of bakol with everything, means he understood the world out there. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai says he had a precious gem on his throat. Some of the Mefarshim understand, doesn't mean literally there was like a sapphire or a diamond or something. It means tzavaro. It was attached to his throat, means the way that he spoke could heal people. Now, that doesn't mean magical incantations necessarily. It doesn't mean it was brachas. It could be brachas, but it could also be that anyone who would see an Avram Avinu, would interact with an Avram Avinu, would be healed by that interaction, the words that he spoke, the way that he connected with them. Yeah, maybe that's a little bit of a homiletic piece on my part, but there's something there. And when he died, it's not like someone else took over, but rather the sun itself out there becomes something out there in nature, to have to find the ways to be healed. So Avraham as a font of knowledge, Avram Avinu as a healer. God gave him bakol. He had all these brachas. One more, give me another minute, because I want to throw in two more elements. Davar acher, Shalom marad Esav biyamav. Esav did not rebel while Avram Avinu was still alive. Remember, Avram Avinu is going to die when he's 175, but there already will be grandsons. His grandsons will be approximately plus minus 15 years of age when he dies. And the idea that Rashi there in Parshat Toldot will tell us is that Avram Avinu, who is meant to live 180 years, lives only 175 years, because to live out the last 5 years knowing that Esav was a rebel and was doing all terrible things would be very painful to Avram. So Hashem took him from the world early, which raises its own theological questions, no doubt, about how long a person lives and whether they leave the world in order not to see something happen in the world. Does that mean they're not aware of what happens when they leave the world? What does it mean that they shouldn't be in the world? Is it that they are aware, but they when they leave the world, but it's not reflective somehow on them, that it's on their watch that it happened? It's not clear. It's a sugya in and of itself. The Gemara Bracha debates to the people who leave the world, they still have an awareness, and how much awareness of what goes on in the world or not. Another idea, God blessed Avram with everything. Davar acher she'asi Yishmael tshuva b'yamav, that Yishmael did tshuva in the lifetime of Avram Avinu. And also Shlomar Esav b'yamav, and also, period. That Yishmael did tshuva in his lifetime. Shalomar Esav b'yamav, that Esav didn't rebel in his day. Minalan, how do we know? Dichtiv vayavo Esav min asarav hayef. V'tana oto hayom niftar Avram Avinu v'asi Yaakov Avinu tavshel shel dashim nachman Yitzchak Aviv. Right, so etc. It goes on, right? So the idea that Esav comes in and he's tired. Why is he tired? Because of all of the terrible things he's been doing out in the field. Comes back home and Yaakov's making soup. The soup is lentil soup, and it's the cooking of the lentils to give to his father, which is the meal that you give the mourners. Okay, so here you have this other idea, or two ideas that really it's connected to the rebellion of Esav, things going off the rails, or maybe of Yishmael doing tshuva, and that he lived to see that. That's a great bracha for Avram. Also a possibility. All in the word bakol. Now, had it said Vashem Berachat Avram im ben, you would have said, well, that's clear. Yeah, it's clear, but all these other elements cannot be admitted now because it says it's the son. specifically, not a son and not a daughter, right? It's not related to other people. It's just him and his family. That's ultimately his only bracha. That he did have a daughter, he didn't have a daughter, not admissible because it says ben, right? So the benefit of having a Torah shebichtav is its clarity, but it's or not clarity. It's clarity when it wants to be clear, but it's deficiency, if one could say it that way. I only mean deficiency as compared to Torah Sheba'al Peh, is its lack of flexibility to be able to admit multiple understandings, again, within a certain bandwidth, right? Bakol doesn't mean, that he got to eat ice cream. That's foolish. That's ridiculous, right? That's not what Bakol means. He had everything. He had every bracha in the world. He had he had an automatic driving car. Shtuyot, absolute shtuyot. Bakol, it has to be within a certain understanding. It has to be something that's admissible. It's something somewhere within the world of Avram Avinu, somewhere within the world of Chazal. By the way, that's a legitimate source. We'll keep coming back to again and again. Which of these things in the Gemara and Bava Batra is interpretive? Which of these is a Masorah? Someone says, I have a Masorah. Lo yodea. V'lo mshaneh. On a certain level. Lo mshaneh. They're all part of the world of Chazal. Anyway, Shelley had another comment, please.
Okay, the particular Gemara that says that he knew astrology, that one seems to be a particular problem, because if all these people who aren't who are pagans come to him for astrological advice, he becomes like the Oracle of Delphi, and he becomes a vehicle for Avodah Zorah as opposed to God, because they're not, even if he says it's a real God and they think he's religious, they're still gonna go on with their own other gods. They're just gonna add his God to their pantheon. So I find that one troubling.
So I give you a few answers to that. Number one, you're entitled to feel it's troubling and just say, that's not going to work. You're entitled to say like that one doesn't work for me. So instead of Rabbi Eliezer Hamudai, I'll go with the Rashbi, or I'll go with Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda, right? Or by the way, fully admissible, none of them. Bakol means he had everything, like we saw before. Some of the Rishonim read, Avram ben Rambam, the Radak, he had his health, he had everything. That's what it means. You don't need all these midrashim, but there's another layer. So answer number one, you don't have to accept that. Number two, this is challenging for us, for me, I will say, in Tafshin Pei Bet to wrap my head around. But the world, it's understanding. Even if people believe in Hashem, they say, why did Hashem put the stars up there? Stam for decoration? Is there no meaning for us in there? And our understanding is that there are constellations change and shift. Is there no message for us? A believing person, a person believed in Hashem, the Gemara has discussed this for a reason, could very easily say, what are those stars up there? We don't believe, we cannot and will never believe that they are their own power. We'll not accept that they are, right? That they are independently powerful. But maybe HaKadosh Baruch Hu transmits a message to us as mortals through these sky patterns. And maybe the role of Avram Avinu is to say to the people, I accept that let's say it, again, I'm saying it b'tzitutim, because what did they know? But the science of the day teaches us this is the reality in which we live. I agree, I accept, but I say to you, none of this means that there isn't a God, one God, not multiple gods. And your terrible errors, your itztagninim, are looking at the sky, at the constellations, the pictures they've drawn by drawing lines between the dots, and from that they've made a God. That's avodah zarah. But it doesn't have to mean that the world of itztagninut, of astrological interpretation, again, l'shitatam, by me, I'm not looking at stars to figure out, something that's coming in the future. That was their understanding of what's happening. You want to say it was the power of suggestion. You want to say it was an uncanny reality. You want to read, if you're interested, lahavdil, you could look at Malcolm Gladwell has a book called Outliers, where he realized that all of the greatest hockey players are all born within, I think, the month of January. He said, well, is that like their horoscope? And he figured out, like, no, it has to do with when the cutoffs are for schooling and for when hockey practice starts. If you're born in that month, but you could easily have said, no, January, it's the star of blah, blah, blah. I don't know, blah, blah, but they're born in the winter, they're from the sun, they're from the snow. So as a Canadian, like when I read that thing in his book, it's, Taka, January, Hardy. But he said, no, it's because Has to do with like when hockey practice starts. Yeah. But now retroject yourself. The pattern of the stars at this time of the year is the picture of blah, I don't know what. So they come to Avram Avinu and they want to know the Malchim Mizrach Hamayrav to ask him. So what do you know? He knows the whole of the sky, right? Ayin Sham by the Rambam in Hilchot, not Avodah Zarah, but Dafka Hilchot Avodat Kochavim Umazalot. That's the root of the problem. But he explains there the history of an Avram Avinu who was starting his journey toward a belief there's only one HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the world by looking at stars. Dafka, it's the Rav has this beautiful idea, Rav Soloveitchik, he was under the stars of Chaldea and in the night sky, and he would see and he would wonder and question, and right? It's based on I'm not so sure you have to push it away with two hands. How could you say that he knew Stagninut? It doesn't have to mean that was perhaps Avram's whole point is stop making from this a religion. It's not a religion. It's what Hashem set up. It's what, right? And again, this is a world where you're a fool if you don't believe in geocentric universe. There's no such thing as a solar system. It's a world system, and we're the world. Right? That's their concept. So I'll close out today because we're over time. Of course, people who will argue, we don't look at the stars anymore as determinative of who you are and what you're going to be. Where do we look instead? We look in this special, instead of a telescope, we have a microscope, and we turn up we look with our microscope. Oh, that's your DNA. You're set. You're stuck. That's who you are. That's who you're going to be. And it's not malleable. Not malleable at all. Right? So now they came up within the last 20 years or so, 20, 30 years, you can look this up. There are studies about what they call epigenetics, where people's gene coding shifts over time. There's a plasticity to it. They did a whole study, I forgot the woman's name, about Holocaust survivors, that perhaps there's something genetic that shifts in them because of their experience that then gets passed along. She did all sorts of studies. I think it was like twins, where one twin was in the Shoah, the other one was not in the camps. So one had severe trauma, one didn't. And then how are their genes different? They're twins. So there's a whole study of this. And then intergenerational communication of trauma, et cetera. Again, but you ask somebody today, it's in the genes. So that at a certain point, it becomes the same thing coming out of your mouth as, well, it's in the stars. It's shifted from stars up to stars inside. Anyway, pet theories and the like. Helen, I'll give you the last word. I'm going to also, let me let everybody go though. And I actually have a 10 o'clock meeting, so I think I'm running a little late. But I wish everyone a good Hanukkah, the last day now, Zot Hanukkah, the lights of Hanukkah should continue to shine. They're not shining literally, physically, but certainly Baruchniut in a spiritual vein. And on Neshamas should continue to be kindled, as I mentioned at the beginning of this year. Okay, Helen, go ahead.